This is Atomic Biscuits, and I'm your host, BACFA. Welcome to another episode of Atomic Biscuits, everyone. Welcome in from around the world. This is episode 2025-0629, Footballs and Stripes. We're going to start over at thegatewaypundit.com. CNN discloses top secret intel assessment about U.S.'s airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites on live TV. And the White House responds to the leak. This is by Christina Lala. A top secret intelligence assessment about the U.S.'s strikes on Iranian nuclear sites was leaked to CNN, and then CNN disclosed it on live television on Tuesday. President Trump on Saturday evening announced that the U.S. had dropped bombs on 3 nuclear sites in Iran. We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iranian airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Trump said on Truth Social on Saturday. President Trump said bunker-busting bombs totally obliterated the Fordow nuclear plant. Satellite images of the Fordow plant showed the before and after following Operation Midnight Hammer. The mainstream media has been claiming the U.S. strikes didn't totally obliterate the Fordow plant. On Tuesday, a top-secret intel assessment of the Fordow plant was leaked to CNN, AP, and the New York Times. CNN reported that, according to a leak, an early assessment from the Pentagon's intelligence arm revealed Iran's nuclear sites are largely intact, and the U.S. strikes only set them back a few months. A leak to the AP also claimed that Iran's nuclear program was not completely and fully obliterated. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt responded to the leak. This alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret, but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous, low-level loser in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets. Total obliteration, Karoline Leavitt said to CNN. And there's a link here that you could watch. I have a feeling that this information was sent in different directions with top secret tags on it to see where it would come out. And I am sure that whomever decided it would be a good idea to go running to the Democrank media complex is going to find themselves in a vice. And almost as if the alarm clock went off, over at One America News, we have this story. Representative Green's motion to impeach Trump fails miserably as most Democrats vote to reject the measure. This is by Blake Wolf. The House, including a majority of Democrats, overwhelmingly voted to reject Representative Al Green's motion to impeach President Donald Trump over his decision to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. The vote ended in a 344-79 defeat for Green, a Democrat from Texas, who alleged that Trump abused his executive powers by greenlighting the strikes against Iran the prior Saturday. 128 Democrats voted with Republicans to kill Green's impeachment measure, with only 79 Democrats voting in favor of the impeachment. There's a link here to a C-SPAN video that has the vote. Green's impeachment resolution detailed his reasoning behind the motion, arguing that the president's actions were in violation of his constitutional duty. Quote, in his conduct of the office of President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and, to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, abused the powers of the presidency when he disregarded the doctrine of separation of powers by usurping Congress's power to declare war and ordered the United States military to bomb another country without the constitutionally mandated congressional authorization or notice to Congress, cognizant of the fact that should another country's military bomb a facility within the United States of America, it would be a de facto declaration of war against the United States of America, the motion read. Green has long been extremely anti-Trump, dating back to his first term, previously motioning to impeach Trump dating back to 2017. Quote, "We need a Senate that will convict him this time, and I want you to know from my heart, I understand that he is a Goliath. He is a Goliath. He has control of the generals in the military. He has control of the Justice Department. He has control of the Republican Party. But my friends, for every Goliath there is a David," Green stated at the Hands Off rally in April. "And I want you to know, Mr. President, this David is going to bring articles of impeachment against you within the next 30 days. Within the next 30 days, I'm bringing articles of impeachment. I'm coming for you, Mr. President. This David is coming for you," he continued. Meanwhile, social media users jumped on X to mock Green's latest impeachment attempt failure. Representative Al Green's sorry-ass attempt to introduce articles of impeachment against President Trump over his handling of Iran just failed big league. 128 Democrats voted to kill the resolution. The left is more divided and ineffective than ever before, one user wrote. Articles of impeachment introduced by Representative Al Green now failed embarrassingly. The Democrat Party is collapsing. LMAO. I can't stop laughing, another responded. There's more video here from X. These guys think we have the shortest memories possible. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Obama bombing all kinds of stuff without authorization. And look, there is an advise and a consent stuff. I mean, yes, there should be some checks and balances, but the prior administrations ran roughshod over some of those old limitations and basically made this. So if they want to get serious about binding presidential authority, then they need to come up with a way to make sure that their guys also can't do some of this stuff. The thing is, the president is acting on behalf of those constituents who want him to take control and to do things that represent their will. Is defending Israel their will? Well, that's a really good question, and I think a lot of people are divided. If you ask Thomas Massey, he would tell you, well, hell no. If you ask a lot of Republicans, did they vote for this? They're going to say, hell no. They voted for no more war, and these forever wars specifically. The approach, however, of let's just shut it all down by obliterating it, let's talk about leveling the playing field for real, is the opposite of what was happening with the Democrats, who were funding these nuclear programs under the cover and auspices of, oh, it's a peaceful nuclear program, and I think everybody knows that's BS, and dumping pallets of cash over there that are untraceable, and moving weapons all around, creating a whole new conflict that they can then bank on. Because you see, the way the world economy works, it's based on the hydraulics of need and want and war and drugs and trafficking. And so they have to set all those things in motion in order to capitalize on it. It's a lot like the wrap-up smear, but not in the words way, in a money way. All you have to do is look and see who is sitting over there in war-torn Russian zones to figure out how they pre-position the oligarchs of America to cash in on the world's conflicts. We're going to have to be very careful about what we support and call out the problems as we see them. And that means no matter who's in charge, we should be looking carefully and pointing and indicating what we support, and whether we want it to continue.
Not for nothing, but I want to know where all the cholos are at in Los Angeles. 18th Street, Florencia. Where's the leadership at? Because you guys are all about territory, and this is 18th Street, and this is Florencia. You guys tag everything up, claiming hood. And now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang there is, there ain't a peep out of you. It's everyone else who's not about the gang life that's out there protesting and speaking up. We're out there like fighting our turf, protecting our people. And like, where you at? Bien calladitos, todos los chulitos. I'm like, dude, they're running amok all up on your streets and in your city. And peep, when the big gang guns come in, nothing but like quiet, and we're out here, the regular ones that have never been jumped in, out here calling things out, trying to organize people, trying to do the thing. So don't be trying to claim no block, no nothing. If you're not showing up right now, trying to like help out and organize, I don't want to hear a peep out of you once they're gone, trying to claim that this is my block. This was not your block. You weren't even here helping out. So whoever's the leadership.
Well, I know that those of you who've listened to me and followed me on social media for a long time know that I was very much focused on what was going on in California for a long time. Some of these La Raza types who are separatists, those folks who are claiming that Mexico actually still controls or should control much of the Southwest, that all this land was stolen from them and that it's theirs, and that the United States is squatting on their land. But then there's the by any means necessary crowd, these troublesome agents provocateur who build little cells to uprise and to work with the money gang. I'm trying to thread this very carefully because I know this is a worldwide listening audience, but you know who funds Antifa. So these people all get together. They're all part of the same army, and they launch their little campaigns. This story is over at zerohedge.com about one such person. And I won't smear her by saying she's affiliated with anybody. You be the judge and jury here. This is by Tyler Durden. Get your effing members in order. Los Angeles official calls for Mexican gangs to mobilize against ICE agents. A top far-left official in southeast Los Angeles County is now under federal investigation after allegedly posting a video on social media calling on Mexican gangs to mobilize against ICE agents. If this isn't textbook insurrectionist behavior, it's hard to imagine what is. Fox News reporter Bill Malugan broke the story on X late Tuesday afternoon. He stated that Cudahy Vice Mayor Cynthia Gonzalez is under investigation for urging 18th Street on Florencia 13 gang members to defend their territory against ICE, reportedly telling gang leaders to get your effing members in order. Here's the report from Malugan. Exclusive. Per federal sources, the vice mayor of Cudahy, a city in southeast LA County, is under FBI investigation after she allegedly posted a video to social media in which she appears to call for 18th Street and Florencia 13 gang members in LA to defend their territory from ICE, even urging gang leadership to get your effing members in order. I'm told Cynthia Gonzalez posted the video late last week, then deleted it, and that the FBI later visited her home, and she is under active federal investigation. Gonzalez posted her social media that the FBI came to her house, and she needs a lawyer. FBI LA tells Fox they cannot confirm or deny an investigation, but they condemn all calls for gang violence. We've reached out to Gonzalez via phone and email and are awaiting a response. No response yet from the city of Cudahy either. We'll update as we get more. And then Bill Malugan, on his personal X account, posts the video. which you can see on this article. And I'll also post on my social media over on gab.com. I'm at BACFA. Meanwhile, the city of Cudahy has posted links on social media, including X, for illegal aliens to call the Churla Rapid Response Hotline amid ongoing local ICE raids. Churla Rapid Response Hotline. Last week, Peter Schweitzer and Seamus Bruner released a nonprofit report on the rogue leftist NGOs likely responsible for anti-ICE riots across the LA area, highlighting Churla as a key organization involved. During the LA riots, a prominent participant was a group called the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Churla, which received money from Arabella, but also millions in taxpayer money from both the federal government, under former President Joe Biden, and the city of Los Angeles for citizenship education. The group claimed its activities were under a separate action group that received no government funds. Ongoing investigations indicate federal authorities, specifically the FBI, are actively tracing financial flows linked to far-left NGOs attempting to spark nationwide color revolutions against President Trump. Parallel to this, now a Democratic local official is allegedly calling for the mobilization of Mexican gang members against federal agents. This rhetoric suggests a possible escalation in domestic threats. And I think we've got to take this seriously. This isn't just rhetoric. This is a call to action. And the agents provocateur need to be arrested. They are the leaders. You need to cut off the head of the snake. You need to find the funding sources. You need to route this stuff out and get rid of this rot while it's exposed. Because if we don't, it will just go back underground and wait till later to reemerge again, stronger than ever. Let's go get it. And truly, I don't think much underscores this situation more than to look at how the federal Democrats, the nationwide Democrats, reinforce the local action. Over at theblaze.com was the story, Democrats unanimously vote against condemning mostly peaceful anti-ICE riots. It's by Rebecca Zeltko. Protecting public safety shouldn't be controversial. House Democrats unanimously voted against a resolution Tuesday formally condemning the destructive anti-ICE riots that took place in Los Angeles, California. The resolution narrowly passed the House with 217 Republicans voting in the affirmative, while 206 Democrats voted in the negative. The riots protesting ICE deportations in Southern California involved rocks being hurled at law enforcement and attendees waving foreign flags. Even as multiple cars burned in a news clip, one anchor described the riots as relatively peaceful and relatively calm, reminding many viewers of the fiery but mostly peaceful BLM riots of 2020, according to CNN. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries took issue with the resolution, saying he will not be lectured by extreme MAGA Republicans about questions of law and order. He also disagreed with the classification, saying there was unrest, but refusing to acknowledge that it was a riot. Well, I'm sure it just depends on which color their flags are that they're waving as to how the Democrats will support them. It's just one big operation.
The major reason that the Biden administration lost track of all those children is because they were emphasizing speed over security. And there were political reasons for that. They wanted to get the kids out of U.S. custody, so they were handing them off to anybody. It didn't require background checks. They didn't require identification even. I've watched horror stories of the same person picking up child after child after child, using different names and different addresses. One of the addresses was a strip club. One of the addresses was a parking lot. One of the addresses was an empty lot that was filled with shipping containers. And this character was getting all these kids. One person got 42 kids to one address. What we're doing now is DNA testing on every sponsor. We're doing personal identification. We're doing background checks, and we're doing income verification.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. My time is
Young
expired.
ladies,
And it's not just the Democrats out in the open. We need to go back. We need to be in that hashtag never forget zone too. We've been wronged, and we need to make sure while we have the authority and power, we execute some serious heat on those who would keep us down. Over at dailysignal.com, DOJ digging and looking into anti-parent school board activity under the Biden administration. This is by Elizabeth Troutman Mitchell. The U.S. Department of Justice is digging and looking into the Biden administration's weaponization of school boards against parents, DOJ official Ed Martin said. Former Attorney General Merrick Garland sent a memo in 2021 directing the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to launch a series of additional efforts in the coming days designed to address the rise in criminal conduct directed toward school personnel. Conservatives saw the memo as an attempt to use the FBI to threaten and silence parents who voiced concerns with left-wing school board policies such as critical race theory and radical gender ideology. Martin, U.S. pardon attorney and President Donald Trump's weaponization czar, said the memo was government weaponized against we the people. If you got hurt, let us know, Martin said. We're digging and listening. There's a post here from X and an official document. Martin thanked parents who have already come forward and stood up against the weaponization of school boards against them. After Martin was unable to achieve the necessary Senate votes to be confirmed as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Trump put him in charge of remedying the weaponization of government against Americans. Parental rights activist Tiffany Justice met with Martin on Monday to discuss the weaponization of government against parents under former President Joe Biden. The Daily Signal has learned. Justice is co-founder of Moms for Liberty and a visiting fellow in parental rights at the Heritage Foundation. Justice shared with Martin what American parents were concerned about under the Biden administration, including COVID-19 lockdowns, learning loss, and falling test scores. She is confident Martin will look into how the government was weaponized against both parents and, more specifically, Catholics. Exposing it so that it never happens again, really showing who was involved and what their motivations were, would give parents a lot of satisfaction, Justice said. She would like Martin to expose teachers' unions for the roles they played in the DOJ branding parents as domestic extremists. The National School Boards Association sent a letter to the Justice Department which prompted Garland's memo, and we covered that here on this show back then. The unions are the foot soldiers of the progressive far left, Justice said. Since the creation of the Department of Education, unions have had an undue influence on our children's lives and our children's education, and they are using the school system to radically transform our country. Anything that we can do to reduce the influence and impact of the teachers' unions is something that I'm supportive of. That, again, is over at dailysignal.com. I think the multi-pronged approach is the right way to go here. It's not just about nailing those who did this to the wall. It's also about making sure they can't do it again. And the primary reason they are able to do this was the way the federal government's Department of Education funneled and fueled money into local jurisdictions with strings attached. Hey, you can have all this cash, but you need to be teaching this curriculum. And that's using our tax money against us in a way that makes war on we the people. So I'm glad to see that this is underway. Not a whole lot of focus on it thanks to the conflict in the Middle East and the conflict in all the conflicts. We need to make sure that our eyes aren't taken off the ball while we have an opportunity to win and score. RedState.com's Becky Noble had lifelong Democrat wants to be convinced to stay in the party, former Dem strategist can't answer. While stories like the ceasefire between Iran and Israel and the deportation of illegal immigrants are right now on the front page of the news. Through all of it, the story of the Democratic Party's implosion with no real end in sight is an ongoing one. We learned months ago that they're learning nothing from the drubbing the American people gave them in November and refuse to come off of totally far-left, off-the-wall views on issues like immigration and men playing in women's sports. But if they won't listen to elected Democrats, pundits, or strategists, will they listen to an average American who still supports them? There's a link here to an X post where CNN is discussing the death of the Democrat Party. One podcast may hold the answer. On a recent episode of The Morning Meeting, a woman named Sharon appeared on the podcast with former Democrat strategist Dan Turrentine, political analyst Mark Halperin, and former Trump press secretary Sean Spicer. She described herself as a lifelong Democrat. She also had this to say: I have been super active in campaigns. I've worked on them. I've volunteered for them. I contributed to them. I'm so appalled by the Democratic Party. I have no idea what they stand for. I have no idea what their policies are. The things that I see that they most talk about feel like very bad for the country, bad for the people, super fringy. So how would you convince me to stay in that party and support it, given what is happening today? Dan Turrentine attempted to tackle Sharon's challenge. He replied, It's a great, great question, Sharon, and I think you speak for a lot of people, and at times you speak for myself, right? Which is just the immense frustration with being rudderless and leaderless, and just kind of often what we talk about is just our dislike of President Donald Trump, right? It's just we scream and pull our hair out and say he's a king, etc. Sharon went on to say that the Democrat Party is in fear of a highly vocal group like the far, far left. Halperin then asked her who her ideal presidential candidate would be. She cited Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat from California. She also said that being from Pennsylvania, she followed Senator John Fetterman, Democrat from Pennsylvania, but thought that Khanna was a more appealing candidate. She continued saying that for Fetterman to recently make the statement that he supports the military, and for that to be a controversial position in the Democrat Party, it's just, I don't understand what they're up to. Turrentine agreed with Sharon, but his first suggestion, and the fact that it was the first, was a bit interesting. He said, when your party goes through moments like this, you face a choice. If the other party is speaking to you more, you like what they're saying, you like their leadership, then obviously changing parties is one option. Turrentine then offered up the half-hearted suggestion that she stick around and stay on the inside and try to get the family to look at things a bit differently and support candidates that might take it in a different direction. But with recent polls showing that only 1/3 of Democrats are feeling very or somewhat optimistic about the future of the party, and another that said the party is largely seen as liberal, weak, and corrupt, not even Turrentine giving it the old college try was convincing enough for Sharon. With poll results like that, Sharon is obviously not the only person needing convincing. As more people like Sharon opt to leave the Democrat Party, they all seem to say the same thing. I didn't leave the party left me. This is over at the redstate.com by Becky Noble.
And dude, that clip has gone so thermonuclear of you saying, listen, I think that they let a foreign government go kill Epstein. And I think this goes way deeper than anybody ever thought, and that America allowed it. And to a man, Matt, we continue to put up this, whether it's Dershowitz or whether it's members of the first administration, we put up this article of Alex Acosta backing you up, saying that Epstein was intel. And nobody's been able to explain it. No one's been able to explain it. Since you're not in Congress anymore, thought we might as well just take a shot in the dark. Still seems to be a prescient issue. What the hell's going on here, Matt?
Well, I mean, at the time when Epstein was involved in these activities, there was a strong desire to keep the United States engaged in the regime change war in Iraq and to keep the UK engaged in that war as well. And so one of the things that intelligence does in the United States and around the world is get people in compromising situations and then use those compromising situations to control behavior. And like you look at some of the people who have had great proximity to Epstein, and it's people who are prominent in business, academia, politics, and that was an op that like was lather, rinse, repeat elsewhere. So I think one of the reasons why there is reticence with some in every U.S. government to really tell the truth that Epstein was but an operator for a foreign government. They don't want to do that because they don't want to have to acknowledge the extent to which the United States does similar stuff. I'm not saying Epstein stuff, but U.S. intelligence absolutely leverages compromise over people in other countries in order to get them to do what we want. And I'm not criticizing that, but the problem is once you start peeling the layers of the onion back on Epstein, it starts to expose the modus operandi that is used by MI6, Mossad, CIA, Indian intelligence, you name it.
You're adapting to the new reality of a full-scale war right here on European soil. And just like your industry, all of Europe is facing a changing international landscape. But in recent months, Europe has taken action. Action that seemed unthinkable just a year ago. We set up the Rearm Europe plan to mobilize indeed 650 billion euros in defense investment over the next 4 years. We must build more bridges between civilian and military. We know that Russia will be capable of testing our mutual defense commitments within the next 5 years. I thank you for this opportunity to engage with you. Long live Europe, and thank you very much.
The Fed is powerful, that's the problem. It's a story by Matthew Blakely over at fee.org, FEE.org, the Foundation for Economic Education. Interest rates are arguably the most important prices in the economy. Whenever the Federal Reserve releases its meeting minutes, a crowd of analysts rush to dissect every comma and qualifier. But in a country that prides itself on free markets and capitalist dynamism, why do we hang on the every word of an exclusive club of central planners? Markets shouldn't have to interpret the tone of Jerome Powell's press conferences or scrutinize the footnotes of bureaucratic transcripts, but they do because we've built an economy where interest rates, the price of credit, and the flow of capital are controlled not by supply and demand, but by a small committee of bankers and economists. The problem isn't just Powell. The problem is that we've come to accept central planning at the heart of a supposedly free market system. What is an interest rate if not a price? It's simply the price of borrowing money. Every time the U.S. Treasury sells a bond, it must pay a price, an interest rate, to attract lenders. The same is true for corporations issuing debt, businesses taking out loans, or individuals financing homes and cars. Like any other price in a market economy, interest rates should respond to supply and demand. When demand for borrowing rises, interest rates should increase to ration limited funds. When the supply of savings grows, rates should fall to reflect greater availability of capital. These aren't exotic economic theories. They're the same price signals that govern what we pay for groceries, smartphones, or pencils. And yet, interest rates occupy a unique place in our economy, treated as too vital to be governed by market forces. Instead of allowing borrowers and lenders to determine rates naturally, we've given this task to the Federal Reserve, a small group of economists with disproportionate influence over market movements through manipulating the supply and demand for U.S. Treasuries. The Federal Reserve has wielded this rate-setting ability to dramatic effect over the decades, raising interest rates aggressively in response to the unchecked inflation of the 1970s, then slashing them to near zero for years following the 2008 financial crisis and again during the COVID-19 pandemic. The central logic behind these actions is that cheap borrowing energizes economic activity because lower rates incentivize consumer spending and business investment. Indeed, many economists justify this authority as a necessity, but few highlight the significant drawbacks and long-term trade-offs. Nobel laureate Friedrich Hayek argued that prices are signals. Interest rates are arguably the most important prices in the economy. They guide entrepreneurs and investors in allocating capital by indicating scarcity, demand, and risk. When the Federal Reserve distorts interest rates, it clouds these signals. Businesses struggle to assess the true cost of capital while savers earn little or nothing on their savings. Worse, artificially cheap credit can inflate bubbles in real estate, equities, or crypto assets, driven by both the low cost of borrowing and the belief that such assets will outperform traditional interest-linked investments like treasury bonds. The underlying problem isn't just the Fed sets interest rates, it's that it does so based on internal models and incentives, divorced from the knowledge of the millions of people who participate in the very markets the Fed affects. By setting interest rates, the Fed obscures and overrides the natural market forces that would normally inform investments and business decisions. This central planning of interest rates, no matter how sophisticated the formulas and calculations employed by the Fed, invariably leads to misallocations of capital in the economy, distorts the incentives of both businesses and consumers alike, and obscures the true sentiment of marketplace participants. In a true free market, interest rates would be a natural occurrence emerging from the interaction of savers and borrowers, just as other prices in the economy are. If we trust markets to determine the prices of oil, steel, and semiconductors, why not money? The more we rely on a small group of exclusive Federal Reserve governors to fine-tune the economy from the top down, the more we endanger the dynamism and resilience that made the U.S. economy the envy of the world. Maybe the problem isn't just who chairs the Fed. Maybe the problem is the Fed itself. Hayek taught us that prices are not mere numbers. They are carriers of knowledge and critical to functioning markets. Thomas Sowell echoes this in his critiques of central banking, arguing that when we replace the knowledge and discipline of the market with the guesswork of central planners, the results are rarely benign. We must stop mistaking power for wisdom and start trusting the market again. That's over at FEE.org. TheRegister.com had this article, Just Say No to No Fakes Act. The EFF argues the problem is focusing on property rights rather than privacy. This is by Thomas Claiborne. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, says the revised version of the No Fakes Act, reintroduced in April, would be a disaster for free speech and innovation if signed into law. The bill aims to address valid concerns about AI-generated audio and visual replicas of people in the wrong way, the EFF argues, by establishing a new intellectual property right over one's image rather than a privacy right that would deter unauthorized AI replicas, among other purported flaws. And there's a link to this bill, the PDF of it, here on the page. The new right would incentivize a market for monetizing the simulation of dead celebrities and would lead to more litigation, the EFF argues. And the associated takedown requirement, the rights group claims, would put the distribution of AI software tools at risk, would encourage overly broad content removal, would make unmasking online content creators easier, and would cement the power of incumbents with compliance costs that startup couldn't easily afford. We simply must stop approaching everything as if property rights are the only way to protect people when privacy does a better job of it, Catherine Trendicosta, the EFF's Director of Policy and Advocacy, told The Register in a phone interview. Property rights inherently create an unequal playing ground where some people's rights are worth more than others, and it's worth more time for people who can license out their image to go after people to preserve their ability to make money or to make money off their dead relatives. In contrast, Trendicosta said, privacy rights are designed to protect you from defamation, misinformation, and misattribution. Creating a property right in this case is just an idea designed to create a whole new market for certain people to be able to make money and not to protect everyone from the really understandable fears people have about digital replicas, she said. The No Fakes, which is Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act, was initially introduced in July 2024 as a way to prevent the unauthorized production, hosting, or sharing of digital replicas of people. The bipartisan bill aspired to give people a property right over computer-generated likenesses of themselves and to establish a notice and takedown mechanism to remove unauthorized digital replicas. The proposed legislation never made it out of committee. That may be due at least in part to opposition from a handful of civil society groups like the EFF, as well as the Center for Democracy and Technology, the Computer and Communications Industry Association, the American Library Association, and others. In a public letter, there's a link here, various advocacy and trade groups argued at the time that the bill would overlap with existing laws, would invite abusive takedown demands, and would increase litigation, among other problems. So 2 months ago, U.S. Senators Marsha Blackburn, Republican from Tennessee, Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware, Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, and Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, in conjunction with U.S. Representatives Maria Salazar, a Republican from Florida, and Madeline Dean, Democrat from Pennsylvania, reintroduced the bill, promising it would protect the voices and likenesses of people from unauthorized digital recreation. The new version covers not just digital replicas, but tools used to make them, expands the takedown requirements to cover more providers, and requires not only takedown but prevention of re-uploading. While AI presents extraordinary opportunities for technological advancement, it also poses some new problems, including the unauthorized replication of the voice and visual likeness of individuals such as artists, said Senator Tillis in a statement. The bill's sponsor claims no fakes will hold individuals or companies liable if they distribute an unauthorized digital replica of an individual's voice or visual likeness. Hold platforms liable for hosting an unauthorized digital replica if the platform has knowledge of the fact that the replica was not authorized by the individual depicted. Exclude certain digital replicas from coverage based on recognized First Amendment protections. And preempt future state laws regulating digital replicas. But Trendicosta argues that the bill's exceptions for material protected as free speech under the First Amendment won't matter in practice. The bill itself has exceptions for what they believe to be First Amendment protected speech, she said. That's not what's going to happen, because when you force companies to take down things, they don't really look at context to figure out whether it's protected or not. They just see that it contains a version of the thing they're supposed to take down. The bill has attracted an endorsement from YouTube, and the Recording Industry Association of America, the RIAA, among others. Trent Acosta said that YouTube's support reflects the fact that it already has a current content takedown mechanism. YouTube has Content ID, which is not required by law, but they've built it, and it's a nightmare, she explained, pointing to a white paper she wrote about the problems with YouTube's system. And all they will have to do is crank that up to 11 to comply with this law, so it's easier for them than it is for anyone else, she said. In fact, one of the problems we have with the bill is the requirements are so intense and so onerous that no one could ever enter this market who isn't YouTube because of the startup costs. As for the RIAA, Trent Acosta said, they always sort of wanted this because they wanted to create a licensing system that they can skim money off of. The EFF contends the broadly written legislation just creates a censorship regime covering not just digital replicas, but products and services that produce them. The revised bill, the organization says, targets tools that can be used to produce images that aren't authorized by the individual, anyone who owns the rights in that individual's image, or the law. Trent Acosta described the provision as incredibly bizarre. It basically means that if you're a service that allows people to download tools, you have to take down tools and similar tools if someone tells you they exist, she explained. But at the same time, who can send those takedowns is incredibly vague. It's a very weird restriction on a tool because, again, there are constitutional uses that are perfectly acceptable of AI tools, and so instead of attacking use, they're attacking the tool. In light of the passage of the Take It Down Act, which prohibits the non-consensual online publication of intimate visual depictions of individuals, Trent Acosta argues legislators should slow down and consider the implications of no-fakes. There's every reason to investigate the collateral damage this bill would have if we've already got Take It Down to address the kinds of harm that everyone really is concerned about, she said. There's no indication when no fakes, currently referred to in the Senate Judiciary Committee, will receive further consideration from lawmakers. It is a dangerous vanilla blank slate when you start making big statements like this. I mean, if you're coming across something on the internet and you do a screen grab and the person that is captured on the video isn't aware that you did it, then that makes paint a violation because you're going to open it and edit it and use it as a meme or any number of things. And that means that really takes down all kinds of creative tools just for creating stuff that we use every day to make material for digital consumption. And it just doesn't take much time to imagine how the big dogs will use it against everyone and speech would be chilled. So I applaud the EFF for swinging behind and having an editorial look at what this act means. I really like Marsha Blackburn, but we have to be very, very careful about how we approach any attack on free speech. And if it does harms, then who was harmed? How were they harmed? And is it simply because someone wants control, someone wants to get commissions and licensing, or is there some problem, something that's harmful that needs to be corrected? And if so, if you can't determine specifically what those harms are, and you can't define in the law what you're trying to remedy, then perhaps the law is too broad and needs to be considered a little bit longer. And I know part of the concern is technology moves faster than law, so they're trying to put it into conceptual law so that it will fit in the future. But that's not very good law to be this murky. We also are very too slow to adapt. Most of the telecommunications laws that protect Americans were written in a time when we only had copper communications, and those laws were written specifically for that telecom industry. So now that we do communications in packetized IP universe and computer communications and not necessarily over copper, those laws don't protect us. So your conversation that you're having over Teams or over some other app, WhatsApp, if the packets are captured by law enforcement, then that's okay because there is no law that keeps them from doing that. Just like they can sit on the side of the road and snag the stuff from your cell phone right out of the air because it's not considered protected because it's wireless communications. So, we need to look at some of these things. We need to modernize some of these things, and we need to be very specific. Why do they need to sit on the side of the road and capture traffic out of the air? What are they trying to accomplish? Is that any different than just filming everybody's license plate as they drive by and look them up? Is that an invasion of your privacy, your free movement rights? Are they looking for someone in particular, or are they just skimming until they find someone who looks interesting and they go after them? We need to decide who is policing what and whether or not it's too much. We often trade security for freedom, and we need to focus on making sure our freedoms are preserved not just for ourselves, but for our posterity. There are some resources that are touchstones that we have to come back to every now and then, and I wanted to revisit this one also at EFF.org this week. John Perry Barlow. I don't know if you are a Grateful Dead fan, if you're from that era, but he was a, Renaissance man. He did a lot of writing. He was a rancher. He did all kinds of wild stuff, as artists do. And he wrote something a long time ago at the dawn of cyberspace that was necessary at the time. The audience that had to hear it needed to hear it. This was written February 8th, 1996, and was given in Davos, Switzerland. And here's what he had to say. A Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace by John Perry Barlow. Governments of the industrial world, you weary giants of flesh and steel, I come from cyberspace, the new home of mind. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather. We have no elected government, nor are we likely to have one, so I address you with no greater authority than that with which liberty itself always speaks. I declare the global social space we are building to be naturally independent of the tyrannies you seek to impose on us. You have no moral right to rule us, nor do you possess any methods of enforcement we have true reason to fear. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. You have neither solicited nor received ours. We did not invite you. You do not know us, nor do you know our world. Cyberspace does not lie within your borders. Do not think that you can build it as though it were a public construction project. You cannot. It is an act of nature, and it grows itself through our collective actions. You have not engaged in our great and gathering conversation, nor did you create the wealth of our marketplaces. You do not know our culture, our ethics, or the unwritten codes that already provide our society more order than could be obtained by any of your impositions. You claim there are problems among us that you need to solve. You use this claim as an excuse to invade our precincts. Many of these problems don't exist. Where there are real conflicts, where there are wrongs, we will identify them and address them by our means. We are forming our own social contract. This governance will arise according to the conditions of our world, not yours. Our world is different. Cyberspace consists of transactions, relationships, and thought itself, arrayed like standing wave in the web of our communications. Ours is a world that is both everywhere and nowhere, but it is not where bodies live. We are creating a world that all may enter without privilege or prejudice accorded by race, economic power, military force, or station of birth. We're creating a world where anyone, anywhere may express his or her beliefs, no matter how singular, without fear of being coerced into silence or conformity. Your legal concepts of property, expression, identity, movement, and context do not apply to us. They are all based on matter, and there is no matter here. Our identities have no bodies, so unlike you, we cannot obtain order by physical coercion. We believe that from ethics, enlightened self-interest, and the commonweal, our governance will emerge. Our identities may be distributed across many of your jurisdictions. The only law that that all our constituent cultures would generally recognize is the golden rule. We hope we will be able to build our particular solutions on that basis, but we cannot accept the solutions you are attempting to impose. In the United States, you have today created a law, the Telecommunications Reform Act, which repudiates your own Constitution and insults the dreams of Jefferson, Washington, Mill, Madison, de Tocqueville, and Brandeis. These dreams must now be born anew in us. You are terrified of your own children, since they are natives in a world where you will always be immigrants. Because you fear them, you entrust your bureaucracies with the parental responsibilities you were too cowardly to confront yourselves. In our world, all the sentiments and expressions of humanity, from the debasing to the angelic, are parts of a seamless whole, the global conversation of bits. We cannot separate the air that chokes from the air upon which wings beat. In China, Germany, France, Russia, Singapore, Italy, and the United States, you are trying to ward off the virus of liberty by erecting guard posts at the frontiers of cyberspace. These may keep out the contagion for a small time, but they will not work in a world that will soon be blanketed in bit-bearing media. Your increasingly obsolete information industries would perpetuate themselves by proposing laws in America and elsewhere that claim to own speech itself throughout the world. These laws would declare ideas to be another industrial product, no more noble than pig iron. In our world, whatever the human mind may create can be reproduced and distributed infinitely at no cost. The global conveyance of thought no longer requires your factories to accomplish. These increasingly hostile and colonial measures place us in the same position as those previous lovers of freedom and self-determination who had to reject the authorities of distant uninformed powers. We must declare our virtual selves immune to your sovereignty, even as we continue to consent to your rule over our bodies. We will spread ourselves across the planet so that no one can arrest our thoughts. We will create a civilization of the mind in cyberspace. May it be more humane and fair than the world your governments have made. Again, that was February 8th, 1996. Long before AI was a general topic, but when there were algorithms, when there was some sense of Turing testing going on, it was around. I want us to think about how that positioning back in the early 90s and where we are today, what sorts of threats we face, how is it the same, how is it different? What sorts of things have we lost ground on, and are there places where we have gained ground and that we've maintained a foothold, that our independence of thought has stayed put? I want you to have a good week. I want you to think about how the shenanigans going on in the Middle East and elsewhere, how the wars are a distraction, what things have to change at the top of the pyramid. If we leave Israel for last, then what happens next? Consider, and then plan accordingly, and be sure to take care of yourself, your family, and your community, because in the end, we really have to depend on our own independence. From the white sand beaches of the Emerald Coast in the free state of Florida on the Gulf of America, this is BACFA. I will see you next week on another episode of Atomic Biscuits. So long.
Thanks for joining us for Atomic Biscuits. Tune in again next week for more news and music. Check out BACFA on Gab at BACFA, as well as Bitchute, Rumble, D-Live and Odysee. Check out LastScoutRadio.com for fun content. Listen to WBN 324 on radio stations around the world, on many streaming platforms, and World Broadcasting Network WBN 324.zil.